It is no longer news that AdonisJS 5 is finally out of preview. This release comes with new additions to the framework such as social authentication, which has been one of the most requested features since AdonisJS 5 preview was released. Also, we have things like authorization, built-in asset manager, amongst others. In case you missed the announcement, you can check out the release post. In this tutorial, we will be looking at how to migrate an application that was built with AdonisJS 5 preview to the stable version of AdonisJS 5. So, this is the application we will be migrating. As I said earlier, it is currently running on AdonisJS 5 preview. So let's get it to the latest version of AdonisJS 5. The first significant change with the stable version of AdonisJS 5 is that it now requires Node.js 14.15.4 and above. On my machine, I'm currently on Node.js 14.15.5, which means I'm good to go. So be sure to be running at least the required version of Node.js to continue with this migration. With that out of the way, now let's start the actual migration. We will start by upgrading the AdonisJS packages to their latest versions. And there are two ways we can go about this. We can either do npm update to update all our dependencies, or we can update each dependency individually. I will be going with the second option because doing npm updates would obviously update all my dependencies, and since I've not been keeping tabs with the development of each of my dependencies, there is a tendency for things to break due to breaking changes or whatnot. So that is why I'm going to update only the dependencies that I have been keeping tabs on, specifically the AdonisJS packages. So let's begin. Npm install at adonisjs/core at latest. I'm using the latest tag so as to obviously target the latest release. I'm going to do same for the remaining packages. So at adonisjs/auth at latest. Okay, that is done updating. Let's also do the same for the dev dependencies, specifically the assembler package. So npm install at adonisjs/assembler at latest. I realized that the assembler package requires a certain version of TypeScript. So to be on a safer side, let's update TypeScript to the latest version as well. TypeScript at latest. Let's not forget to specify that they are dev dependencies. Now let's move on to updating the application specific packages, specifically the Adonis Stripe package. While we are here, let me point out that due to the way the application bootstrap process now works in the stable version of AdonisJS 5, the service providers now receive an instance of the application class, unlike before where it used to accept the IOC container. So that means we need to update our service providers accordingly. But this application does not contain any application specific service providers. But we also need to check with third-party packages we might be using, in this case, the Adonis Stripe package, to ensure they are making use of the latest changes. But for the purpose of this tutorial, and since I am the author of the Adonis Stripe package, I have updated the package to make use of the latest changes. So I'm going to update the package to the latest one. So I'm going to do npm update at meze labs/adonis-stripe. Okay, so that is that about dependencies. So now let's move on to application specific changes. The first application change we will do is to update middleware to make use of inline import statements. So instead of doing this, let's comment this out and use the inline import statement. Import at ioc:\adonis/core/body parser. Then this will be adonis/addons/shield. Then this will be app/middleware/silent auth. So we can get rid of this. Let's do the same for the named middlewares. Import, same thing for this. Using the import statement as compared to using the string-based reference would ensure that the TypeScript compiler reports invalid references in advance. Next, let's update how views are rendered. With the stable version of AdonisJS 5, we have two ways of rendering views, that is, synchronously and asynchronously. And as you might guess, rendering views asynchronously will allow us the ability to make use of await directly inside our template files. Personally, I have been in a situation where I wanted to run an asynchronous task directly inside the view, but I couldn't because before now, views are rendered synchronously. So this is a great improvement. So let's update them to make use of asynchronous rendering. I'm going to do a find in all files. So I'm going to search for view.render. So then I will update them individually. So await. Of course, this needs to be async for us to make use of the await keyword. Async, then await. So the method is already asynchronous. Update this also. Await. Then lastly, await. I'm going to save all the files. As you can see, the preload method has been deprecated in favor of the load method. So let's update that as well. I can't remember the amount of places I'm using preload. So again, I'm going to search preload. Let's make it this way. .preload. I'm going to use the find and replace feature of my editor. So I'm going to replace all .preload to load, and we'll update all. Next, let's update some of the configuration files to make use of the latest additions or changes. We'll start with the database config file. So the ORM property has been deprecated in favor of naming strategy, which is a new addition. Though I'm not doing any specific ORM configuration, so I'll just get rid of this. If you are doing any specific ORM configuration in your application, do check out the documentation on naming strategy. Next, let's look at the alt config. As you can see, those red lines, this is as a result of the fact that the list property has been deprecated in favor of guards. Lastly, the stable version of AdonisJS 5 had a feature where empty strings are converted to null when dealing with forms. So we need to update the body parser configuration file to make use of the new feature. Body parser. We need to make the changes directly on the form object and the multiparts object. So I'm going to search for form and I will add it here. So convert empty strings to null and set it to true. And I'll do the same for multipart. I'm going to add it here also. Convert empty strings to null and set it to true. Then we should be good to go. To make sure we are, let's start the application and check it out. Oops, load is not a function. The preload method hasn't been completely deprecated. It has only been deprecated in favor of the load method when lazy loading a relationship. So if you are not lazy loading a relationship, then we still have to make use of the preload method. So instead of blindly replacing all preload methods with load method, we are going to instead do that for only when we are lazy loading the relationship. So here we'll make use of the preload method here as well. Let me search for where else I am using the load method. Here we are lazy loading the purchases relationship, so the load method is okay here, but we need to update this to preload and this to preload. I'm going to save all. Now everything should work. Let's refresh this. The application is now running on the stable version of AdonisJS 5, and everything seems to be working fine. Of course, I have only pointed out or implemented the changes that are relevant to this application. So I will recommend you check the release post for a list of changes that comes with the stable version of AdonisJS 5. If you would want to learn how to migrate your AdonisJS 4 application to AdonisJS 5, you can check out the Migrating to AdonisJS 5 course.